Resourceful Designer, episode 71. Good design, quick design, cheap design. Pick 2.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing.
And now, your host, his favorite Ninja Turtle is Donatello, Mark Decode.
Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am so happy that you've been able to join me today as we discuss running our graphic design businesses. Now, I have an interesting topic this week, and I think you're really going to like it. It's a little play on words similar to the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you remember those old Westerns. But I've given it a little bit of a design twist. But before I get to today's topic, I want to share a little story with you on how perception or point of view can play into things. Earlier this week, I was asked by a long-standing client to come up with a design for a poster. It was for a Mother's Day event that they're doing, and they were a little bit late to the table with this one. So they said, Mark, we really need something fast. We're doing this Mother's Day promotion where anybody who submits a photo of their mother, either a photo from the 80s showing their mother in the 80s garb, or a modern photo of their mother dressed in a retro 80s style, they would be entered into this contest to win something. And they asked me, says, Mark, in the poster, can you find some stock photos of that crazy, stupid way the women used to dress back in the 80s? Well, during the meeting that I was having, and they said this person, my client, says to me exactly that. Can you find a photo of the way they used to dress, the stupid way, and that was his words, the stupid way women used to dress back in the 80s. And I looked at him and I said, hey, I went to high school in the 80s. And what you're calling stupid, the way the women dressed back then, was my high school days. Those were the girls that I was into, that I found hot. And my wife, when I met her, had the big hair and the fluorescent crop tops and all that sort of stuff. So I told him I took offense from that. Well, I didn't really. I mean, it was all in jest. And luckily, this was an old client and we know each other well enough because, once again, built up a great relationship with them that I was able to joke along with them. But it's true. It just shows the perception from different angles, the whole eye of the beholder type thing, where in his eyes, because he's much younger than I am, he saw the fashion style of the 80s as something stupid and ridiculous. But to me, being a child of that time, being in high school at the 80s, I love that look. I'm not kidding. When I first met my wife, she had the big teased hair. And all the girls back then, to me, they were hot. So it just goes to show you that different people can view things in different ways. So anyways, I thought that was funny and we had a good laugh about it afterwards. And I did design him the poster that he wanted and got it to him on time and did have a cheesy photo of some woman that looked like she was dressed in 80s garb. And everybody was happy. Now, speaking of happy, we're having a great time in the Resourceful Designer Facebook group. If you're not a member, please head on over to resourcefuldesigner.com/group and join. There's been some really great conversation, some great sharing in there and help. It's amazing how many people step up when somebody has a question, how many people are willing to help and give advice. And it's just a wonderful community. So if it's something that you might be interested in, please, once again, resourcefuldesigner.com/group and ask to join. I will let you in and you can be part of the community. And now, as always, I would like to share a resource of the week. And this resource was actually something that was discussed in the Facebook group. Somebody was asking about hosting and maintenance fees for websites and how you go about doing them. I gave my answer on how I do my hosting and my maintenance, monthly maintenance that I charge for my clients. But in my response, I also mentioned that I use a program called iThemes Sync, and it's actually synced by iThemes. And if you want to know more, you can visit resourcefuldesigner.com/sync, and that's SYNC. And what Sync does is it allows you to enter a whole bunch of websites. I've paid for extra websites. I forget what the base is, if you're allowed 10 websites or 5 websites. I know I've paid for multiple websites. And every time I build a new website for a client, this is a WordPress website, of course. Every time I build a WordPress website for a client, I add them to my Sync dashboard. And then when it comes time to update, either update WordPress, update the themes, update any of the plugins involved, I can see in one dashboard every one of my client sites, and it'll tell me this theme needs to be updated. Here's the plugins on the site that need to be updated, or WordPress itself needs to be updated. And from that dashboard, I can update everything. So I don't have to go and log in to every single customer website individually to see if there's any updates required. Not to mention that they also send me a daily email to let me know if there are any updates that need to be done. Now, as a bonus, because this is so simple, I've actually passed this on to my virtual assistant, and she goes in twice a month. She'll log in, she'll look at all the websites there and just click update the either WordPress or the theme or the plugins and update everything. And then she sends me an email and just says everything is up to date. And that way I know that the websites are secure. There's no vulnerabilities. Everything is up to date. And it makes it so easy to manage things. Literally, a couple of dozen websites can be updated in under 5 minutes. So if that's a service you offer your clients, if you're designing websites and you're offering the hosting and the maintaining, managing, and updating plugins and all that stuff, I highly recommend you look into Sync by iThemes. And I do have an affiliate link, which is resourcefuldesigner.com/sync. Once again, that's SYNC. And if you do use that link and sign up, I do get a small commission from them, but it's very well worth it. I've been with them for over a year now, and it makes it so easy to, as I said, maintain and keep on top of your client websites and your own websites as well, for that matter. So that's this week's Resource of the Week. And now on to today's topic. Good design, quick design, cheap design. Pick 2. Wouldn't it be nice if every client we had came to us with an unlimited budget, and then they gave you all the time that you needed in order to complete their project? And they also gave you the freedom to come up with your best design without any criticism or anything. Wouldn't that be great? If only we can dream, eh? But the truth of the matter is, there's very few clients that have both the budget and the time that we would like to have on a project. And if you do manage to find one of these elusive clients, please latch onto them for dear life and don't do anything to compromise that relationship. But more realistically, the clients you're going to get want you to design something good, but chances are they're also going to want something as cheap as possible. They're not going to want to spend tons and tons of money on stuff, and they're going to want it quick. They're always going to have some sort of deadline. And that's where the whole good design, quick design, cheap design comes in. But therein lies the problem. You see, good, quick, and cheap are all possible. They are all achievable, but only 2 at a time. Now, this is not something I came up with. Truth be told, I heard about this on another podcast. I have a buddy of mine, The Real Brian, who hosts The Real Brian Show, which is a great podcast, very motivational, very some stuff geeky, some stuff philosophical. Anyways, it's a really great podcast. If you want something to check out, The Real Brian Show at realbrianshow.com. And just as a side note, yes, I designed that website for him. It was just a quick and dirty website I threw together for him. It's not my best work, but if you want to see something that I've done, check out realbrianshow.com. And please check out his podcast. Now, on his podcast, Brian talked about the good, the quick, and the cheap, and how it applies to everything in life. If you're hungry, you have many different options available to you to satisfy that hunger. You want something quick and cheap? Well, go down to one of the fast food joints and pick something up. You can get it quick and cheap, but it's not really going to be good. It might taste good, but it's not really going to be good for you. Now, if you want to eat something that is good for you, but you want to be cheap at the same time, well, you better roll up your sleeves and get to work in your kitchen, because you can create a really good, healthy meal, and it will be much cheaper than anything you're going to get going out. But it's not going to be quick. You're going to have to spend the time preparing and cooking and everything involved in making that meal, so it won't be quick. Now, on the other hand, if you want a meal that is both good/healthy and you want it quick, you're going to probably want to go out to one nice sit-down restaurant where you can get a good quality meal without having to wait for it too long. But the problem is any of these really nice, healthy meals at a good sit-down restaurant are not going to be cheap. So there it is. You can have good, you can have quick, You can have cheap, but you can't have all three. You can only have two. Now, I thought I would apply this concept after I heard it on The Real Brian Show. I thought I'd apply it to our profession and say that there's good design, there's quick design, and then there's cheap design. And once again, you can't have all three. If a client comes to you and they want something good designed and they want it quick, you could do that. You should have the ability to do a good design in a short turnaround. But that doesn't mean it's going to be cheap. You should be charging them probably a premium. You're probably going to want to charge them a rush fee. And your price will reflect what you are capable of doing. It's a case of when the client comes to you and say, well, why should I pay you that price when it only took you 30 minutes to do it? Well, again, the answer to that sort of question is it didn't take me 30 minutes to do it. Yes, maybe physically it took me 30 minutes to actually put the thing together, but it took me over 25 years. In my case, it took me over 25 years to become a good enough designer so that I can create that thing in 30 minutes. And that's why this job is not cheap. So if you want good design and you want it quick, you're going to have to pay for it, especially in premiums. Because if you want something that quick, I'm going to charge you a rush fee, and you should be charging your clients a rush fee as well, because otherwise they're going to start taking advantage of you. So once again, good design done quickly is not cheap. Now, sometimes a client will contact you or somebody will contact you and say they want a cheap design and they need it quick. They don't have a lot of money. They want it as cheap as possible, but they also need it really fast. Well, you know what happens there? Cheap design, quick design, it's not going to be good design. And if that's the case, if that's what the client's asking for, don't waste my time. If you want both cheap and quick, then hey, by all means, go to some place like Fiverr or 99 Designs, because if that's your attitude, I really don't want to be bothered with you. You're not the type of client I want. Now, there are some cases where a client will come to you and they're looking for some really good design. Maybe they're a startup and they want something really nice to help boost their startup, but they really don't have the budget for it. So they're asking if you could do something cheap. Well, if that's the case, the client has to be prepared to wait for the design. I've done it before where I've seen the potential for a startup and I could see that they would probably going to I don't know if make it big would be realistic, but I had a feeling that they were going to make it. And in order to make it, they needed a good brand. And I really wanted to help them out. But they were honest with me up front and said, listen, we don't have a lot of budget. We were given so much money to start off. They got some sort of grant and some of it had to go for all different pieces. And they only had a certain fix. And they told me right up front, this is how much money we have for design. And it was much lower than what I would normally charge a client. So what I did is I told him, I says, listen, I'll do it for that price, but you're going to have to wait for it because I'm not going to drop other stuff or schedule it in amongst my other work. What I'll do is whenever I have some slow periods here or there, I will work on it. And luckily enough, it was at the early stage of them forming this new startup company where they still had several months. So I was actually given, I think, 9 months to work on this branding. And I agreed to do it for their lower price, lower than what I would normally do, because I had 9 months to work on it. And I did just what I told them. Whenever I had a little bit of free time here or there, I would call it up and I'd do a little bit here, a little bit there. And it was great. So they were able to get good design. They got it done cheaply, but they were not able to get it quick. They had to wait for it and they were willing. So maybe that'll happen to you. If you have a client, sometimes there's somebody that you just feel right. There's a good vibe. You feel like you really want to work with this person, but they're honest with you. They don't have the budget to hire you. Well, maybe you can compromise and offer to do the work for them, but only when you have the time. They can't get it quick. So it all comes down again. Good design, quick design, cheap design. You can only pick two. It all comes down to perception, need, and value. And different clients will see things differently. And you can actually use this with your clients. When somebody comes up to you and says, like, I need a logo, I need it. Can you do it by the end of the week? And I only have so much money to spend on it. You can stop them right in their tracks right there and say, listen, you're asking for something good, you're asking for something quick, and you're asking for something cheap. I can't do all three. But if you want to pick two of them, then I can help you out. Now, if they say they want something quick and cheap, it's up to you to decide whether you're willing to do and whip something up quickly that maybe you're not proud of. But I mean, you don't have to put it in your portfolio if you want. And if you need the money, then there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, you need something quick and cheap. I'll do a logo for $100 for you, or $50 or whatever you consider is cheap. And I'll do it, but it's not going to be my best work. And you don't spend the time on it. Maybe you come up with a logo. You don't do all the research. Normally a logo, you do research and you do prep work. Well, every once in a while, there might be a logo that comes along and somebody says, well, here's the name of my company. And you just go, okay, give me 30 minutes. I'll come up with something. Now, some designers might not want to work that way, but I'm just saying some people, if you're starting out and you're looking for trying to build yourself up and you're looking for ways to make money, and maybe your income is not where you want it to be right now, and you're taking on any work you can in order to build up your portfolio, then maybe there are things you can do here and compromise and do work for clients cheaply if they give you enough time. So you can do good work for a low budget. Maybe a client will come up to you and say, I need something really good, but I also need it really fast. Sure, I could gladly do that for you, but you're going to have to pay a premium price or a rush fee or something and take advantage of them. I don't mean take advantage in a bad way, but I mean, if they want you to do it that bad, then charge them for it. So that's the topic I wanted to share with you today. That there's good design, there's quick design, there's cheap design. But when your client comes asking for them, there's only 2 out of the 3 that they can get, and it's up to them to decide which 2. Or it's up to you. As I said, in some cases, if they want something quick and cheap, maybe you're in the position, like I would be in that position where I'd say, if you want something quick and cheap, I'm not the designer for you. But maybe you're in a situation where you need the money. Again, you're just starting off or for whatever reason, and you're willing to do it. Well, do something quick and cheap. Just don't spend a lot of time on it. It doesn't have to be your best design. So that's this week's fun little topic. I would love to know if you've had any run-ins with clients where they wanted something cheap or quickly and good design, and how you managed it, how you handled it, or how you didn't handle it. Please leave me a comment in the show notes for this episode by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 71. And now, this week's question of the week. And this week's question comes in from Michael. And he asks, do you turn down work that does not align with your personal values and morals? If so, how do you, quote unquote, let them down gently? Well, Michael, I think every designer should do this. Turn down work if it doesn't align with your personal values or your morals. Not only that, if something doesn't align with your design principles, then you shouldn't do it. I actually did an episode on this way at the beginning. It was episode 5 of the podcast, which you can find by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 5. And the title of that episode was Don't Compromise Your Principles. And I talked on this exact topic where every once in a while you might come across a client or a project or something that you just don't feel right about. And it's okay to say no. Now, in that episode, and I'll go over them briefly here, I have 2 distinct, when I read your question, there's 2 distinct clients and situations that popped in mind. One was just shortly after I'd started my business. There was a client that came to me, and this client was an importer of, let's just say, adult toys for the bedroom. And what he wanted me to do was create the packaging, design the packaging for all these different paraphernalia, if you'll want, for want of a better word. And he was willing to pay me quite a bit of money for doing this, because after all, that is quite a lucrative business he's in. So he was willing to pay a lot of money. But the problem was, and not that I'm against that industry, the problem is I was working from home, and it was during the summer when I had my son and my daughter home here with me. So at the time, I believe, if I'm trying to do the math here, I think my son was around 10 or 11. My daughter was 6 or 7 years old, something like that. So for me to work on a project where part of it, I wouldn't have to worry about photography or anything. He had a photographer taking photos, but then I would get all these images from a photographer, and I would be sitting here having to go through photos of, I guess, for lack of a better word, naked women on my computer, with a chance that my kids can walk in at any time. Not to mention that my office has what's called a French style door. So it's a door, but it's full of glass panes. So even if you're not in my office, if you're standing outside, you can still see what's on my computer screen. So I politely told him that I can't work on this job because I have my young kids at home. And he was very understanding about it. He understood that. And I gave him I got names to a couple of other designers I knew that might be able to work on it. And to be honest, I don't know what became of that project. He was referred to me from, actually it was the print shop where I used to work, and they didn't want to work on it there. So they gave him my name, and then I had to turn him down. And again, it's not that I was against the industry. It's just with kids around, there was no way I was going to work on a job that had naked women on my screen just in case my son or my daughter walked in to, who knows, come and ask dad a question. So that was one job that it wasn't that it didn't align with my personal values or morals. It's just I didn't feel comfortable taking on that job. Now, one that definitely didn't align with my personal values and morals was I had a really, really good client. They were a client of mine when I used to work at the print shop. And when I left the print shop, they followed me. And this was a client that owned, I would say 6, 7, probably 8 different businesses. And I had branded the umbrella company that owned all these businesses. And then over time, as they would acquire all these businesses, I was branding each one of the individual businesses. So they had their foot in all sorts of stuff, from gas stations to corner stores to restaurants to telecommunication. They had a telecommunication company, jewelry stores. There was all sorts of stuff. But one of their companies was a tobacco company. And at one time they came to me, and the tobacco company happened to be on a reservation, and they're a little bit more lax when it comes to tobacco. I'm pretty sure that the big tobacco companies have a lot of regulations when it comes to advertising, and it's really not like it used to be, but now it's pretty hard for a tobacco company to advertise. But on native land, some of the rules are a little more lax. So this company, or my client, came to me and they wanted me to design a poster, or I think it was a poster. Anyways, it was some sort of marketing material. And this was their exact words. Can you design something that would appeal to teenage girls ages 12 to 16 that would possibly motivate them to want to try smoking? And when I heard them say that, I couldn't believe my mind. You wanted me to design a poster that would encourage young girls. It was like young teens, but they specifically told me that it was more geared towards girls because they thought they were more susceptible. And they wanted me to design a poster that would entice girls to start smoking. And I refused to do that. I told them, I says, I can't do that. I am totally against that. It goes against my personal values and my morals. I will not design something like that. And they gave me an ultimatum. And they were, at the time, I'd say over 30% of my income, my yearly income, came in from that one client. It was probably closer to 40% of my income came in from that one client. And they gave me an ultimatum. They said, listen, you're the only designer we're using right now. If you refuse to do this job and we have to find somebody else, we're taking all our work to that other person. And I didn't even hesitate. I told them, I says, listen, if you do what you have to do, I can't work on that project for you. And I never heard from that client again. And I lost in that one decision. As I said, I lost over 30% of my income for that, but I didn't regret it one bit. To this day, I've never felt like I made the wrong decision or anything like that. There's no way I could have brought myself to design something with the purpose they had in mind. I couldn't even believe that they came to me with that proposal for a project. So to answer your question, Michael, is yes, I turn down work if it doesn't align with my personal values or my morals. And as to how I let them down gently, I just tell them outright, I can't do that job. There's no trying to beat around the bush, trying to be nice. I don't burn bridges. I don't tell them that they're idiots or I think they're stupid for it or anything like that. I just tell them I can't work on that project. Personally, for my own personal reasons, I cannot work. And if they don't accept that, so be it. Just like that big client, they couldn't accept that I didn't want to work on that one project. And they ended up taking the work, all their work for all their companies elsewhere. And I did suffer for a bit because of the income I lost, but in the long run, it all worked out. And I'm glad that I picked the high road on that one. Now, just on a side note to your question, Michael, I'm thinking back to episode 5, Don't Compromise Your Principles. In that episode, I also talked about design principles, which is not something you're asking, but I might as well touch on that too. And if you're really interested in this, you should go back and listen to episode 5. But design principles, if somebody asks you to design something and you know that it's bad design or doesn't work, there's times where I've told the client, no, I refuse to design that. And in almost every case, the client has finally come around, and I would explain. I wouldn't just say no. I would explain why it's bad design and why we shouldn't do what they're asking. And eventually I was able to convince them that I could come up with a better way to design something. I think there's been only one case where somebody was really, really wanted something designed in a certain way. And I told them right off, I says, listen, this might come back on me in the future. And somebody might find out that I'm the one that designed this, and I don't want that because I think it's a really bad design choice. And the client ended up taking the project elsewhere. Now, I didn't lose that client. They brought every other project, but for some reason they were adamant on doing this one thing. And I can't remember, this was years ago, and I don't remember what they had asked me to do. But it was just one of those things like this wasn't the case, but I'll say jokingly, it's something like the client wanted me to design something using Comic Sans, and I refused to do it. But that's not what they were asking. It's just I don't really remember. I just remember in the back of my mind that there was a client that I didn't work on a project because I didn't agree with the design direction they wanted to take on it. So anyways, a little bit of a tangent there on your question, Michael, but I hope I did answer it that yes, if you have your personal values or morals are not meshing with what your client is asking you to do, then by all means, turn down the job, turn down the client. In the long run, you'll be happier and better for it. So I hope that answers your question. Now, if you would like to have your question answered on a future episode of the podcast, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and leave your question. I would love to answer it. So that's it for this week's episode. Another short and sweet one. I thought it would be a fun topic. The good, the quick, and the cheap. And I would love to know what you thought of it. So once again, you can leave a comment on the show notes at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 71. Until next time, if you want to keep up with things, please join the Facebook group at resourcefuldesigner.com/group. You can also like my Facebook page at facebook.com/resourcefuldesigner. And you can follow me on Twitter at resourcefuld. Until next time, I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best with your graphic design business. And as always, reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.